All right, we are live. Welcome, everyone. I'm Danielle Patterson, CEO of Family Office Access, and I'm thrilled to host this edition of our Lunch and Learn series. Today, we're shifting the conversation from capital to connection, from transactions to trust. We're exploring what it takes to build meaningful communities and relationship capital that outlast market cycles or titles. Joining us are two brilliant minds who not only wrote a book on this topic, but also live it out every day through their work with family offices, founders, and leaders around the world. First, I would like to introduce David Homan. David is the founder and CEO of Orchestrated Connecting, a global community of connectors, orchestrated opportunities, an impact-focused advisory firm, and Soar Connect, a startup focused on the strength of authentic relationships. He hosts a podcast called Orchestrated Relationships, focused on developing relationship value, is an active classical composer, and is a proud father of two. From middle-class beginnings as the son of a college professor father and a nonprofit-focused mother, he has built a network reaching into the most private and incredible circles globally while maintaining a code of purposeful community building called Orchestrated Connecting. Welcome, David. So good to have
Thank
you.
you, Danielle.
My pleasure. Next, I would like to introduce Noah Askin. Noah is an associate professor of organization and management at UC Irvine's Paul Merage School of Business, where he also serves as faculty director of their Leadership Development Institute. An award-winning teacher and researcher, Noah is an expert in organizational dynamics, leadership, and culture, focusing on the informal networks of communication and connection that drive organizational life. Noah's work has garnered him recognition on the Thinker 50 radar list and has been covered by various publications, including the BBC, The Economist, Rolling Stone, NPR, Vox, and Forbes. He lives with his family in Southern California. Welcome, Noah. Thank you guys both. Yes, this is such an honor to have you here. I cannot wait to dive into today's conversation and to learn more about both of you, your work, your relationship with each other, and what led you to write this incredible book that, there we go. This amazing book, which I have been devouring since the day I got it. I would love to just kind of set the stage by getting to know you both a bit better. And as we talk about relationships, really, I'd love to start with how the two of you met. What was the chain of connection that brought the two of you together?
David, you want to start our origin story from your side, and then I can pick it up from mine.
Yeah, so I'll bring everyone back to that incredible time in our world where we were, closeted in small or large places in remote areas, fearing COVID every single day. And I had decided to pivot my in-person event series to virtual, had built out more of a global network, and was, trying to figure out what this meant, what meaning it was. And then a mutual friend of mine and Noah's said to me, and Noah, I think you guys should meet. And so Noah had actually started something, which I'll let you share about Noah, which was the impetus for our friend Jamil to say, a former student of Noah's, you guys are going to have something come out of this. I don't think you knew it was a book, but here we are.
Yeah. A big thank you to Janelle to bringing you two together. Excited to hear your side, Noah.
Yeah, Jamil Wynn was a former student. So I was a professor at INSEAD in France. And when COVID started, I had a 2.5-year-old and a 6-week-old child in France with no family help around other than my immediate family, my wife and myself. And knowing that I wasn't going to get a whole lot of work done, but I'm an extrovert. I teach about networks and networking. I needed some way to get in touch with the outside world. So decided to host open office hours. Which really was just putting it out in the world, saying, I'm a professor of management and leadership. If you have questions about anything related to networks or the research that I do on creativity or something about your career, whatever, I'll make myself available. I had no idea what kind of response I would get. I put it up on LinkedIn, and I filled 50 office hour spots in about 5-6 hours. And was off and running. And I started doing this regularly every Friday for about an hour, hour and a half in 15-minute blocks. people from all over the world, randoms who I had no connection to. And based on that, Jamil, who was a former MBA student, was like, this approach that you've taken to connecting and helping and generosity, you should meet this guy, David. And David and I met, started chatting about what he was doing with his community, what I was doing with teaching networks and doing this office hours. And I would love to say, and the rest of they say is history, but then it was a 5-year endeavor to get where we are today.
Oh my gosh, amazing. I love the origins and just imagining you in France and everyone in lockdown. I mean, I love the way you turned a really scary situation into something positive and just was a leader for others and was able to create that connection despite the situation, and that it brought the two of you together. That's beautiful.
I mean, the thing I'd say real quick is, when you have young children, especially during COVID, the last thing you think is, I'm going to meet somebody else and have another baby. But that's essentially what happened 5 years later. We put this thing into the world. It took about as much time, effort, and money to sort of get it there, and it's in its infancy. But last week we did get the notice from our publisher. We just reached a USA Today bestseller status. So we got something that like the parents can quote unquote be very proud of.
That is amazing. And you should be very proud. I have only about halfway into it, but it is really a very powerful, very meaningful book. So excited to dig into it more today. So this was a 5-year process. When did you first really recognize that your combined perspectives could be something bigger? And when did the idea of the book first come into fruition?
So from my perspective, go ahead, David.
Yeah, no. Go ahead, Noah. You'll probably say something much more accurate than me.
From my perspective, as soon as I started talking to David, because I had been teaching networks, my background is in networks, as my PhD in sociology and business is like really about studying the structure of networks. But I'm teaching MBA students who want to know, like, well, how do I think about networking and connecting with people more meaningfully? And it's funny, you think students going to a top tier MBA program wouldn't want or need that kind of guidance, but they did. And so I started poking around into like what was out there around how to better build connection. How should you think about networking? And there's some good stuff out there. Actually, a former professor of mine at University of Chicago, Nick Epley, does some wonderful stuff on connection. We cited a study or two of his in the book. But I wanted some more practical, real world applications, not just the academic, but I wanted to balance that. And so when I first contacted David, it was and started talking to him, I was like, I would love to talk to the people in your community about how they think about networking, how they go about it, how they keep track of things, what's their process. And that was the beginning of it. And I suspect, and David can correct me or make it more accurate, that he always had this idea of like, I want this to be in a book form, his sort of approach and process and framework. And I was thinking like, how can I provide some, practical advice for executives and MBA students, and then maybe get an academic publication out of it. But I think relatively quickly, I don't remember exactly when, it sort of became like we should put this together. But I'll let David tell his version of that.
Yeah. So I'll tell you one of the interesting things that we found in this. So Noah said, I'd love to interview some of your network. I put together a list. It was gender diverse, racially diverse, age diverse, and everyone said yes, which in itself is something in a network, because every single person, I said, hey, will you take time to be interviewed for this? They all said yes. Amazing. And then when Noah started to give me this idea of like, what were the results from this? I remember the line he said, which was, there's something there. There's a there to this. It wasn't actually like eloquent, but I remember this because it was a validation that the way I've done this, which has been a rejection of a lot of the ways that people run events, the ways that they run community, the way that they say connection needs to be, because I didn't find that effective for me. And I did it instinctually. And then Noah said the thing that shook me, which he said, with one exception, every single person I interviewed brought up from some point in their lives the trauma that they had overcame in order to make themselves what we would call a natural giver.
Wow.
I never sat there, Danielle, like sitting there being like, okay, well, what happened to you? And do you fit into my network? But what came out of was this profound understanding that something in this approach, this vulnerability, everything there had people feel to somebody they've never met, they could either share that trauma or just share that it happened, because we realized that what we had was a way to filter to the absolute best of people who chose every single day, one, not to act like a victim or a martyr, but more than that, to work to protect other people from having to face what they had faced or something like it. And that's, I think, Noah, when you made that comment, like there's something there because there's a different type of person, but it's not a bunch of people who went through an MBA program. It wasn't just a community builder, a tech founder, or a family office. These were people from all different walks of life who had a similar psyche and a
Wow.
drive to do more for other people than just for themselves.
What a profound realization. And that's just beautiful. It's who we are, humans at our heart, at our core. And that creates the real connection, the deep human, the the sadness, the sorrows, the vulnerabilities, the pain. And that is incredible. It gave me goosebumps hearing you talk about it. Wow. So I'd love to know a bit, David, your community. How is it that people are able to become a member of what you're building?
Well, how about I tell everyone your story as an example? So,
Absolutely.
a mutual friend of ours named Wendy comes to me and says, I have somebody I think you should meet. Here's who she is. Here's why. Now, Wendy, I'd known for years. I trust her. She's part of the network. And Wendy knows the code, which she didn't have to say to me, but I'll say to everyone who hasn't heard the shtick over and over. Wendy knew she could only introduce me to action oriented, natural givers that I or she would leave my children with. Now, it doesn't matter, Danielle, that like you are an incredible mom as well with everything that you've built, because a lot of my network are purposely and happily childless.
Yeah.
Some maybe messed up their kids, but now they're doing great. Like there's all these variations because we're not perfect. We're all
Right.
imperfect humans. But how we approach relationships had to be purposeful and intentional. And every single person in my now nearly 2,300 person network has been vetted with that code. I'm unapologetic. You stake your involvement in my community on vouching for somebody else to act that way when you're not around. And that is the primary way people get access. They have to be a connector. I don't care if somebody says they're a connector. Show me. Don't help me, help somebody else you've not met, and then see how a community really feels.
I love that. And Wendy, I mean, I owe her such a huge thank you. She is incredible and belongs in your community and is doing such incredible things through her philanthropic work and building community and connection as well. So it's amazing the way that these like energies just attract and then create ripple effects.
It is, but you have to be intentional and ask for what you need. I'm
Yes.
forthright. I want to meet that type of connector. I want to meet every connector like that. And I have, and Noah and I have this in the book, over 14, now maybe 16 types of takers we want to avoid. So you have to be able to put it out there, not just what you want, but what you don't want.
Yeah.
And then people actually get it and they're more discerning for what would be valuable.
Amazing. Well, I'm excited. We're going to dive into your community and your approach a bit more, but I want to hear from you, Noah. Just when we go about intentional community building, I feel it's more urgent than ever in this day and age. Um, why do you think, especially high profile leaders, mission driven leaders, why is it important that right now we focus on this community building?
So I don't know that it's any. I think it's always been something that's been important. It's just the way that we've gone about it. I think has shifted. Somebody posted in the comments already about connecting has taken on an entirely different dimension post COVID and post Web 2.0, and I think the intentionality around community building when we do have basically a global unlimited reach, right? And unfortunately, we are programmed to connect with people who are like ourselves. And the question is, on which dimensions do you line up? And there's sort of very publicly notable ways in which people are connecting with others who are like them purely ideologically. And we don't want to go down that rabbit hole necessarily, but I think building community is something we're programmed to do. It's how we as a species have survived. And historically, it's been like, who's in my tribe, quite literally, because they're going to protect me, I'm going to protect them. And when you have access to everyone effectively, and you have opportunities to connect in different ways with different people, different reach, the demand, I would argue, and that's kind of the premise of the book, is that you want to connect with intentionality, right? It's not just who's immediately around you. It's not just who's exactly like you. It's not just who's going to reaffirm your existing worldview. You want to connect intentionally with people that bring something new and different to the table, that maybe are aligned on values, right? This is what David's talking about in his code, or aligned in certain behavioral expectations, right? Trustworthiness and a willingness to connect, to be action oriented. But I think having that code and being intentional about it, and then recognizing the world is the available opportunity set. And so how can I now figure out who are the people that are going to create my community based on the things that I care about most, based on the things that I believe in behaviorally, based on the values that I want to uphold, and how can we bring that kind of grouping together, as opposed to purely along sort of the traditional racial, ideological, familial type lines that have historically been the sources of community building.
Anything you want to add on to that, David?
Noah says it so eloquently. I'll just say it a little bit more bluntly. It is asinine of people and misguided to think that if you surround yourself by people who look like you and talk like you're both helping the world or helping yourself. Strategically, and this is something I've taught now to the best connectors I know, the more diversity you have in your network, the more opportunity you have for yourself from it. And we live in a world now where like tribalism is like, yay, like let's just surround ourselves with people like ourselves. Let's move to a small place in the Midwest and only have one type of person there. Except for, what do we have in this culture, in innovation, in food and technology and medical, everything that hasn't come from a combination of cultures, hasn't come from an incredible unchampioned vision of so many women that then the men took the credit for. Like, we live in this world that pretends right now that if we have a certain archetype and a certain power structure, it's better. And I just challenge anyone to say, show me how it is better in the way our world currently is, compared to embracing people around you that are purposeful and intentional, not just conforming to who you are.
I love that. And it speaks to someone's outlook. Do they have scarcity or abundance mindset? If you have abundance, you see differences as an opportunity to learn, not something to be threatened by. And, when we look at COVID, there were, of course, many negatives, but some of the positives were we all had to enter this virtual stage, and now connecting virtual is a commonplace, all of us. And for me, I love that. I have calls with people from around the world all day. And I think, had we not had what happened in COVID, that wouldn't be a common work practice. And so it is remarkable to see. And nowadays, the WhatsApp, the communities that, really span all geographic borders.
But Danielle, it doesn't mean people actually do it right.
Yeah.
I will have so many people who jump on a call with me, and 25 minutes on the call make an ask of me they could have made to start. Or they could have made that ask and I would have said, I'm sorry, I can't help you. The number of people that we connect with who think that we want to just hear their life story and then they end the call. Like, we don't like we lived in a world where everyone got lonely. Everyone realized they had to figure out a new way to thrive. And then instead of turning that into a global consciousness, we retracted into a world where everyone's trying to figure out why the networking advice and the way our world should move forward feels like it's massively regressed.
Yeah.
And then Noah and I meet people in our lives and the people we choose to be around us that don't buy that, yourself included, that are building things that want to thrive, want a better place for our kids. And it's just not that hard to engage with curiosity and vulnerability. And yet most people, the statistics are, fail to do that in 7 out of 10 of their interactions.
Wow. Well, tell me, I know you're very good at encouraging people to ask, to know how to ask for what they need. You know, we're givers, so we give, but you have to know how to ask in return. And I love your community because everyone's looking to help each other. What can I do to help you? You know, and so for someone who's bad at asking, what advice do you have?
I call this the impact ask. I'll give the quick version, then maybe Noah, you can give a little bit more on like what you've seen from this and your own perspective.
Yeah.
Um, if you say I desire something, I want something, right? Everyone goes, good for you. If you say, you know, that you have to have something happen, everyone goes, what about me? Most people ask in a way that is either self-effacing or so arrogant and misses the point, which is if somebody is going to align and spend their time, their energy, their money, or a relationship to help you, why not make it your passion? And then talk about what happens when that's amplified. Could it be something more than just about yourself? And then what most people fail to understand is they need great specificity
Mm.
as opposed to broadness. Somebody calls you up, they're like, I need a job. You're like, great, you need a job. Go find a job. If somebody says, I lost my job because of my tech company cutting tens of thousands of workers. I'd like to train in artificial intelligence and understand how that's going to intersect with robotics. Do you know someone? Then
Mhm.
somebody might actually be able to help you. But we think we're limiting ourselves by being specific, but we're actually narrowing the potential that anyone could help us
Mm.
because it's just all about us and what we have to have as opposed to how we could do better with those people if they were able to support.
Wow. I love that. Getting
Yeah,
clear.
just to add to that, I think, the orientation of how can I help you is a wonderful orientation of sort of giving first, and the give and give that, and the generalized reciprocity that exists in David's community, and that really that we talk about in the book. Like when you create a group of people who help each other, not because the transactional response of, well, I'm going to help David because he'll help me. It's, I'm going to help David because he's, involved in this community, and I know that this community is action oriented, wants to give first, so it's going to come back to me even if it's not the one-to-one, right? That's wonderful. But what's the interesting flip side of your ask of how can I help you? You need somebody on the receiving end of that question who has some clarity around how they can be helped, right? And so that's where we say this all starts, right? It
Yeah.
starts from a deep understanding and a clarity around your own purpose, right?
Mm.
What is it that gets you out of bed in the morning? What
Yeah.
keeps you up at night? And because that is the thing that you're going to be able to leverage beyond yourself, right? What David is talking about, how can I make an impact ask that is going to, that can be amplified by the connections that perhaps you can offer me. And so when you start with that level of clarity of your own purpose, it makes responding to the question, how can I help you, much easier. And so that's really where it begins, is that own self clarity. And I think a lot of the networking advice that's out there is a lot around, all right, if I just help other people, that will be beneficial because it will come back to me. And that's true, but that's not enough. I
To
think
to a degree, it's true when you're in a
right.
place of abundance. When you're not, it actually proves to be completely false most of the time.
And the other thing is, I need to go network to help people to help clarify my own purpose, to have other people play back to me what it is that's interesting, or to and it's not that networking and connecting with others can't help you learn. It absolutely can and should, but there needs to be some foundation from which you're beginning. And I refer to this as your bat signal in the book, like the when we're writing about purpose. The point is, like, you need to be able to put out into the world the thing that you care about, to draw the other people that want to talk about this, or that have some connection to it, or see themselves in it. That's how community starts to build around an idea or a value or a set of values, because you as an individual have enough clarity and enough sense of your own purpose that the world is kind of responding to that.
I love that. It starts really with the own inner work and knowing where you fit in, and almost becoming the leader that then attracts those that really are aligned, whether they're doing the same thing or just can amplify it. And David, I want to circle back to you and your response. So you said, yes, it's true in an instance of abundance, but in scarcity, can you talk more about that?
So it feels really great to help people when you have
Mm-hmm.
a job.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard to help people when you need to find a job. When you're going through a divorce or an ailing or dying relative or loved one, it's really hard to be present. And it's really hard for people to ask for what they need. It's really hard to do that in a place of need. And a lot of people in that place of abundance, Danielle, like we will all feel so great because we don't actually need the support. It's just nice to have.
Mm-hmm.
And when you put that relationship value out in the world, it's shocking, still to this day, how everyone in my community has felt that place of despair when they said, well, I helped this guy. I got him a job. And then I said, my son would just like to meet your friend. And then the guy goes, well, I'm not going to do that. Or makes a promise and doesn't do it. When there's a direct, tangible, I gave you something, you
Mm-hmm.
got a result from it. And I didn't ask, where's mine now? I'm asking to help my kid or someone else. And the problem I found is, which is really the reason my community exists, is to make relationship value valued,
Mm-hmm.
is that the people giving that value actually have to demonstrate it's a value first. We have to say, to everyone listening, like, Danielle is a great friend of mine. I believe in everything that she's built. She's started with Family Office List into Access, into this firestorm of being in everywhere I went. She's gone from having a great list into being a thought leader in the family office world. I'd like to connect you with her, but to do so, I'd like you to understand that, like, she is my friend. We talk about each other's kids. We talk about our marriages. We talk about our lives. And if I'm going to connect you with her, somebody that I've known now for 5 years, I really want you to value that and understand we have an ongoing relationship. And when you say that to somebody, you're giving them a choice to be honorable or dishonorable. But few people will actually say that. They treat it like it's you should meet Danielle. She's in the family office space. You're a family office, without giving the context and the personalization of it. And all that is making the other person feel good, giving context for an intro, but demonstrating that value so that when at some point the value you gave, you need to come back to you, you don't have to remind the person you gave them value, or they need to honor that.
Wow. Powerful. I love how you can articulate these things. We all know this, but really to be brave to say it. And I imagine there's so much trust that is involved in making those introductions. Trust that I will receive this person and there will be synergy, but trust that this person will show up. And, can Noah, maybe you take the lead on talking about the role of trust in relationships and how you think about trust and how do we create that trust and what happens when that trust is lost?
Sure. I mean, it's everything, right? That's sort of the simplistic, forehead smacking, obvious answer, but like trust is everything in relationships. And if I'm going to make an introduction to David, to somebody that does not know him, or he does not know, I'm not only trusting David with that person, I'm trusting that person to follow through, to honor the connection being made, and frankly, I'm staking my own reputation
Yes.
with David and with this other person potentially by making that introduction. And so that trust is critical. Now, the problem with trust is, generally speaking, it takes a long time to build. One of the main ways that trust is built is just watching the repeated patterns of behavior and people doing what they say they're going to do over time and time and time again. And that's great. The problem is most of us don't feel like we have that time, or certainly not in a moment of need. And if there's not an abundance mindset, you certainly have this feeling of like, yeah, I know this person, but we haven't built that trust up yet. And so what we talk about in the book is, it's not a shortcut to building trust, but a way to build trust faster is to
Mm.
create conditions where people feel safe enough to be vulnerable. And what's interesting is the academic research shows more people want to open up, more people want to be vulnerable. They want to share something meaningful and humanizing about themselves. It just sort of gets taken out of us culturally over time. And one of the beautiful things about the methodology in the book, and something that I have been doing for years now in my classes, is you create conditions where people understand that like this space is safe, and now we're going to give you opportunities to be vulnerable. And what that does, I mean, I've seen David do this in groups of 30, 40 people who've never met each other. I do this in groups of 50, 60, 70 students who maybe know each other, they can't, or maybe not, they have some familiarity. And if you give them the space and the permission to be vulnerable, and you give them a prompt, not to like share all of their deepest, darkest secrets, or just sort of like vomit their problems all over the person next to you. We've all experienced that, but to just open up a little bit about something that humanizes them. It's amazing how quickly trust and identification with each other can be built, and it sparks curiosity. Oh, you have this particular experience, or this person was meaningful to you. Why? Or here's my version of that. And it builds trust so much more quickly. And so it's about creating the space, providing the opportunity, and giving people permission, really, to be vulnerable. And really, people want to do that. And trust happens quite quickly when you create those conditions.
It's beautiful. And I have to tell a story. I think this may have been the very first time I talked with you, David. It was shortly after my mom passed away. And I just still, even to this day, I find myself crying on phone calls because it's just, I believe that grief is one of the most beautiful emotions because it shows how much we love. But in talking to you on that first call, I was mortified. I was like, why am I talking about my mom to this person? And I'm crying. And the way that you just embraced and said, no, that's beautiful. Like, please. And you appreciated that I felt safe enough that I could do that. And it's always stuck with me. And I love that you both, encourage that. And hearing you talk about it, Noah, I mean, it makes perfect sense. It helps see the real human, not just the polished exterior, the titles, the degrees, but really who we are and what we care about, and even some of the things maybe that have hurt us.
Danielle, I really appreciate you still having the courage, especially in a public forum like this, to bring that up. And I'm still so sorry for that loss. I mean, I remember that call, and I remember, I think, partly the shock in you feeling like we had to stick to our agenda. What do we do when, in my world, like, what type of person would keep to an agenda? Not meaning you, but me, to like not hear and recognize that, because who needs to get through everything you could do if then the end of that conversation you walk away and go, my God, like I talked about what happened to somebody who I've become myself and my own kids, and this guy just wanted to talk about family office access. Like the time wasn't wasted. The whole relationship is distorted by this idea that you shouldn't be there for somebody, even if you don't know them, when they're expressing a need or a vulnerability for it. It builds a whole different type of trust, which then the ripple effects from this, and I always try to explain this, and why does there need to be a strategy even when there is a connection? So in building that friendship, trust, I have gained clients, I have gained investors, you have gained members and subscribers to your group. People you have featured on these podcasts and these things have come from my network, because we built a reciprocity of not keeping score. And at the same time, what people don't seem to understand, and this is something we cover a little bit towards the latter part of the book, is I believe we have maybe 4 or 5 opportunities in our life when we meet somebody that's going to change our life. So Noah, as you talked about before, of like what we call like working and honing your instrument, that self-work. If you haven't done that and you missed that opportunity, that's 1 out of 5. You missed it. We do not want to live in a world of regret. We do not want to live in this space where we just are waiting for something we deserve. But unless we embrace a system, maybe this methodology, for those of you listening, to understand there's a different way of being that doesn't have an agenda when you meet somebody, it has an openness to see where your resonance can be, you end up with something so much more strategic, because once you have that trust, you have that person's trust in their network as well. And a decade into this, I have one of the most insane networks on the planet of trust, not of access. And it's different than people who say they know somebody but can't get to them. When I say I'll get to somebody, I get to them because I built the trust first and then I explored a mutual opportunity. And we fail to see that because we think that, no, as you mentioned, we don't have time. I don't have time to have 100 shallow conversations, but I have time to have 100 meaningful ones.
And
Oh,
I want to, can I make this like even more practical? Like
yeah.
practical is not the right word, tangible, I think. So if you think about, any kind of community, oftentimes you are invited in because of some line on your resume or your last name or where you live or a network, some fact or figure about yourself. Right. And it's the same thing if you think about how do you typically introduce yourself to somebody, right? And I refer to it in my classes, and we talk about it in the book, and I call that the LinkedIn introduction, because it's everything that I could learn about you from looking at your LinkedIn page in about 10 seconds. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. The problem is when you're first meeting somebody and you're using that LinkedIn introduction, what you're doing is you're ostensibly looking for points of commonality, but what you're doing is you're creating status differences. Your points of differentiation. Oh, David went to that school, or David lives in this type of town.
I didn't go to Harvard.
Right.
No, went to Harvard.
or David works at this particular place, or has this last name, or this famous friend. We're ostensibly searching for points of commonality, and if you find them, great. But otherwise, all you're doing is finding points of differentiation. Because when we get into groups, we're always doing a little bit of the step. Where do I fall in this status hierarchy? And what's different about leading with more vulnerability and leading with something that's humanizing is instead of points of differentiation, it's points of connection. And it's this, whether you're talking about, and think about the way that David approaches his community. Action-oriented givers who I'd be willing to leave my kids with. And it's really about, like, have you developed your own clarity around your purpose, and have you figured out what your impact is? All of that is not about some resume line or a last name. It's a lot about yourself and what humanizes you, what motivates you, what you care about, as opposed to saying you went to whatever school, or you operate in this particular circle, or whatever. And so I think that you can see that both at the micro level, one-to-one, how we introduce ourselves, or how you think about community building and where you choose to focus as a means of drawing connection versus distinction.
That is so powerful. It's literally like a mindset shift. And I think people, at least in our, financial ultra high net worth industry, just think they have to follow this playbook. And it's actually the complete opposite. And I'd love to hear your perspectives. I mean, David, I've been to your events and they are amazing. And I love that you've created them in a way to address everything you kind of hate about the industry standard and the way many other events are. But I think people going to events, they have this playbook in their mind of how they are supposed to show up. And, old day, it was the business cards. Now it's, the QR codes and whatnot. But can you speak to us about how we can think about networking through the right framework, the way you see working when you're in a room and you're attending an event, you may not know someone? What are some of the approaches that you recommend making?
Okay, to give the caveat first, if you're stepping into an event that's not mine, if I'm the one stepping in, I'm already unhappy. Design an event for an extrovert having a great day, and you failed, except for that extrovert who was like the head cheerleader or the star quarterback. Design an event for people having a horrible day who are introverts, and you have real success. And what that means is, if you're coming to an event to meet people and you're holding the event, then how about make those people feel welcome, feel vulnerable by starting off with small groups? That's my recipe. It's pretty simple. I've had thousands of people come to my events, yet barely any of them do it for their own events. And I walk into their own events and I go, I love your network. You can come to mine. I'm not coming back. Because when I'm having a bad day, my 8-year-old, I've been yanking off his Switch 2 with Super Mario, which is one of the best games I've ever played, but still, he needs to get to his homework or something like that. Like, nothing gets designed right, which means everyone coming in, they're already at a disadvantage. And so you can do your work, you can have your lines right, you can know that value, and unless the circumstances were set up for you to thrive, they're already against you, because people, Noah used this term, or was it Noah, remixing, right?
Mm.
Like this idea that like what most happens in events is people just gravitate to their tribes, the people they know. They're not actually going to find the right person, because you might meet somebody, they may not be the right person for you. And after 1 to 5 conversations, your night's done. It's really exhausting. So the main thing, call it fishing with vulnerability.
Mm.
You have to be curious, you have to be really empathetic, but you have to be able to put out there a few things that are both strategic and valuable you'd be willing to open up about, to see if somebody else can open up as well. And
Wow.
from that, you maybe have a much greater chance of that person opening up back with something that helps you align, or helps them say, you know what, Danielle, you should really meet my friend Noah. He has a much greater idea about this than me. Go meet him. And that's the ripple effect that I hope that organizers can better structure, but all of us attending can have a different way to approach it than a quota of conversations that all feel stale.
Mm. I love that. And you brought up a very important word, and I know you guys talk about it in the book, but the element of curiosity. And maybe Noah, can you take the lead on how does curiosity play into relationships? And for me, I'm just, this is why I do Lunch and Learns. I'm so curious, and I want to share my curiosity with those that would benefit. And I like walking into rooms, events without an agenda. It's actually just to learn from others and to listen, but in the greater context of your work and relationships and communities, where does curiosity come into play?
So I think it's as integral a part as trust and the vulnerability that is required to build trust. I think curiosity is what allows us to approach somebody different from ourselves from a friendly stance, from an open stance, from a let me better understand that, and it links to the vulnerability and the willingness to share something about yourself and to invite others to share something humanizing about themselves, because that's where you're much more likely to find that point of commonality with somebody who, from a demographics perspective or surface level, or even from something deeper, might be different. But that curiosity, well, why do you think this way, or why is this the thing that you care about, or what is it that led you to this particular place? And David alluded earlier to some research that I found when I was digging through some for this book, of in social interactions, something like 7 out of 10 people aren't asking real deep questions about the other person that they're talking to. They're lacking in that curiosity. Now that the research is a bit older, but I still think, from personal and anecdotal, or anecdata as we call it, experience, that seems about right. The average person, when you meet them, is ready to tell you all about themselves and doesn't engage. And yet we know, again, from the social psychology research, that asking lots of questions, getting the other person talking, is what leads to greater liking, not me just talking incessantly and telling you everything about me. And so that curiosity is in some ways a secret weapon, right? That's not that secret. It's just an underutilized weapon,
Yeah.
because it is what allows people to feel safe once they've offered vulnerability. It is what allows people to feel like they can connect with somebody different from themselves, and to better understand people who are different from themselves. And so it takes the various principles that we talk about in community building: diversity, vulnerability, generosity, and curiosity kind of ties them all together, because it's what enables diversity to function effectively. It's what invites vulnerability from others. It is what allows you to be generous with somebody who may not look or like you or come from a similar background. And so it really is, in many ways, the secret sauce that allows all of these other principles to thrive and function effectively in building not just one-on-one relationships, but communal relationships.
So remember, right, for everyone listening, right, probably all of us too, you were younger, you met, hopefully on the right type of setup date, that person who was the most gorgeous, the energy, everything about them just made your jaw drop, your heart sink, and you told them everything about your life, everything that you are. You poured out your heart and souls, and then it never called you back. Right? Like this is what everyone has lived this to some degree. Like what happened? Like I felt so great sharing and they didn't feel heard. They didn't feel appreciated. They didn't get to share where they were because you were so consumed with having them be curious about you that you neglected, and that was the red flag, that you would never turn around and actually care equally about them.
Mhm.
We fall prey to this day and night, and people wonder why they're lonely. It's pretty lonely when you talk at people. And so that statistic, right, just to bear it down, you go to something, and out of 10 people you meet, 7 suck at asking one question about you. One that has any depth or any meaning. You waste your time with 7 people because they cannot get past themselves to share something vulnerably back or ask a deeper question that gives them an opportunity to share something. It's appalling. And yet it is your fault if you walk into that room and you're not curious with somebody else. Nobody else but you. It's on us to do this work,
Mm.
to be ready for those opportunities.
I love the curiosity. I am back in my founder-led sales, and I absolutely love doing them because I don't start by selling. I start by asking questions. You know, if this isn't the right solution, I'm not going to waste 30 minutes of your time. I'd rather ask about you, know what your goals are, know who you are, what you do, so I can determine, is this really going to work? And we can save ourselves all time. But through that discovery and those questions and that curiosity, I feel like I already know and care for the person if it is a solution we can offer. So I definitely feel the power in that curiosity. And something on the flip side, I think, you know, I do ask a lot of questions, and I think it's powerful when someone can very openly say, I don't know, if they don't have the answer. And that to me builds more trust than someone making up some answer. So trust, curiosity, vulnerability, I mean, all of it, it all just is such important cornerstones of relationships. Now, I know we still have time, and I want to make sure that we address people's questions and things, but really what a lot of what we are talking about is in the book. And so I wanted to make sure that everyone actually knew the book. It recently just came out and is already a bestseller, but we have a QR code on the screen so you guys can check this out. I promise you it's going to change the way you approach community, relationship building. And I'm only halfway through, but I already just am so grateful for what I've learned. And it's really beautiful because it's a culmination of both Noah and David's work and what they've been building for years. And so thank you guys for just, allowing the opportunity to share. Now we're nowhere near done.
Great.
So,
Thank
but I
you.
just want to make sure
Thanks.
while we still have a grateful live audience that everyone got to see that. So I'm curious to learn more about the concept of tribalism, Noah. You really talk about tribalism, but then purposeful community, and what do you see the difference there?
So it's funny that a book came out not long before ours called Tribal by Michael Morris, who's a professor and a psychologist at Columbia. And he kind of makes the case in the book that tribalism is our instinctive nature, and what I talked about earlier, right? We're drawn to people like ourselves. And yet if you can reframe what is the core principles of your tribe around something other than the kind of surface level demographic type things that historically have defined tribes, that we're tapping into that tribal nature. And so, you know, in some ways I buy the idea, and in other ways I think that it's actually getting out of tribal, because, you know, I think tribalism is, again, it is this falling back on our kind of default to connect with people who look like ourselves, similar backgrounds, right? In sociology we call this homophily. You know, homo, same, philly, liking, we like people who are like ourselves. And look, there's nothing wrong with that. It is certainly easier to connect with people when there's a lot of commonality. right? You have similar cultural understandings, similar sort of upbringings, and just you have a lot more touch points. The problem is, taken to its extreme, right? You can think about groupthink taking place. You can think about echo chambers that
Mhm.
play out when you're just constantly sharing the same worldview with the people that you're tight with. And what does that do, right? If David and I had very similar backgrounds and similar upbringings and similar education levels, lived in the same place, and six other people like us in the same group, we just keep kind of spinning around the same ideas over and over and over again. And we're also limited not only in our worldview but our access, right?
Mhm.
What coverage do we have? Nothing beyond just that small worldview. And so purposeful community is, again, trying to both utilize our desire to be in tribes, right? To be surrounded by people we trust and we're comfortable with, who have our backs and whose backs we have, but to be intentional about what are the grounds on which we're actually collecting those people, not just because of homophily, not just because of some similar demographic feature that makes us feel like, okay, we're in this tight knit clan tribe and it's us against everybody else. And so really, like, it is combating the idea of intentional community building, of being purposeful in the way that you approach your social world, is trying to combat our instincts, which have developed over millennia because for survival purposes, and are no longer necessary, nor are they serving the purposes of a greater good. And so that's really where intentional community kind of steps in and says, all right, let's play on our default natures, but let's find ways to get around the sources that were bringing us together to have greater reach.
Wow. I love that. Thank you. Anything to add, David, before I pepper you with my next question?
No, I was just going to go here. That was beautifully said, Noah.
It was. It
Thanks.
was. You guys have such an amazing way of articulating things. So obviously I work within the world of family offices. David, I know you do as well with many of your clients. I run into struggles where people just think, I should get a warm introduction, and I don't feel that it works that way. I mean, it's the trust has to be there that well, who are you and why would you get an introduction? And you can't necessarily monetize that. It's there. I'm curious how you handle people that just want you to introduce them and they're not members of your community. And also
Yeah.
how
So
yeah.
yeah. So let me share like my favorite anecdote from years ago. This was Milken before COVID hit.
Okay.
And for those of you in the family office world that don't know Milken, it's one of the largest deal flow spaces on the planet. And so I was there with the very prominent family office friend, a next gen whose dad's one of those types that everyone wants access to. And like a lot of interactions at conferences, we were done talking with people and we had to go pee. So we walk into the bathroom, we do what we need to do, and then this guy starts chatting us up because he noticed my friend's name. And my friend and I wash our hands. This guy is still chatting us up. He walks out of the bathroom with us. He still chats us up, and then we have to go. And he reaches out to like shake our hand. And I look at him and I was like, "I'm sorry, but you didn't wash your hands." And he pauses, and he didn't even act mortified. Maybe he was internally. And I'm just thinking, like, gee, I'm not gonna touch you. I, saw, I sort of saw what you did while you chatted me up when I wanted some privacy, and he was so focused on the deal, he ignored the fact
Oh my
that
goodness.
etiquette was just ridiculous. And like the minute you lose a sense of what it's like to just be around other people because you have to get through somebody or to somebody, we see it coming for us. We don't see it when we do it that often. So somebody says, "Oh yeah, I'd like a warm intro to X billionaire that you know." And I'm thinking, well, I don't want to talk to you.
I
So,
know.
so convince me. And then you're spending your time
Yes.
having somebody convince you of something that you don't even know that person wants to hear.
And it's your
And then
relationship. Yes.
correct. But I would easily do it if I knew what that person wanted, what they needed. But that's my private IP of the network that I built, the thousands of hours I put into it. So why are you trying to ask through somebody when instead you should be asking to connect with that person and to offer one of our principles, generosity, and then see what happens from that.
Thank
Because if
you.
it's a 1-0 sum game, like you lost in the beginning, not that if that guy had washed his hands, anything more would have happened, but it was just evident of just the inaneness, right? That lack of awareness that
Oh,
somebody had because they thought they had the only opportunity they were going to get. And the thing they have to realize is they tried to work through me to talk to my friend because of who his dad is. They neglected the fact that I know hundreds of people like that friend because I didn't matter. Because if you Google my last name, you don't see a Forbes article about me and my net worth. So therefore, they assumed I was less valuable. You want to lose access to me and my entire community and network? Make me feel like I don't matter because my worth isn't measured in dollars.
this is where I wish I could throw in the comments the fire emoji. That's amazing. Like, that I just find, if that's your work, your relationship, your trust, and if they're not willing to put in the time to build that trust and relationship with you, I just thank you for answering that and sharing that story and making me laugh because some days it is frustrating, but how do you tell them eloquently? Do you have a response to that?
The former chair of my charity that I ran for many years, he would basically look at those people because he could do it and go, F you, strong letter to follow. But in the end, right, you're not about burning bridges. In some cases, you think somebody might learn. But I just say, with all due respect, that's not a connection I'm willing to make. In some cases, I'll try to school the person more, but it's when they're sort of weaselly and insistent
Yes.
that I now say to them, you should read my article on
Oh, I love
takers. Which one do you think
Ah,
you are? They get curious and they're like, oh my God. I mean, they don't
mm,
actually do this, but everyone else goes, yeah, that person's a selfish asshole. That person is a honeyed wasp. That person is, because we built these archetypes for us to
yes.
see through these people. There are different ways we do it. Some are completely subtly generous, but they're not. And others are just completely forthright. And it's just incredible. People think they can get away with acting in a way repeatedly that ruins their reputation with so many different people.
And David, tell us where's the best place to find those videos where you go over the archetype? I found those like just amazing because once we learn, you can spot it and then you can learn, how to respond to those. But I saw them on your LinkedIn feed. Are they archived somewhere or should people go to
Yeah,
your
I'll
LinkedIn
give you
feed?
the shameless plug with the caveat. This is a reminder. I now have to have our video editor edit it a little bit. We put all of these videos, the takers and the connectors, on our orchestratingconnection.com book webpage, where if
Amazing.
anyone loads it up, you see first, hey, now we're a bestseller. We now put a new, really amazing animated video about the book there. But if you go under media,
Yeah.
all of those takers are there. All of those connectors are there. And if you go back to that homepage, you can take right now for the grand price of $0.00 our connector archetype test, which is in beta
I
form.
yeah.
And you can not only see and get a custom PDF back from us, the type of connector you are, you also get to see the type of takers we think are most view you as prey.
Oh, I didn't realize there was a PDF that came with it. I took it. I think I was like a creative connector, but I need to know who to look out for now.
We'll resend you the one that has less typos because when you do this while publishing a book
Yes.
and parenting over summer when camp comes out, you make mistakes,
Make a
mostly
couple
me.
typos.
I mean, we
It's all
spelled
good.
connector right, but like beyond that, there were some challenges.
Hey,
But it's an open offer,
we're all
right
human.
now. This is something that like we're not trying to warn people about. We're trying to help people build better behavior to protect yourself, to protect the people around you, and maximize these opportunities. Because I would love a world without dicks, without selfish assholes, without takers, without all these things that we've given permission to exist
Mm.
when we don't have to.
Oh my gosh. Well, Danny Thomas in the audience says it best. So much gold all in one place. This has been an amazing conversation. I can't believe that the hour has flown by this quickly. And I feel like we've not even scratched the surface. So I can't wait to finish reading the book. I can't wait for everyone to learn more, the website, watch the videos. Other than the resource, the website we shared, anywhere else people should be looking to connect with either one of your work?
The typical place, LinkedIn. We both have our Instagram pages now that we're starting to do more very sort of book and related content there. But we're easily found from the book website. Each of us have our own, David's community, my academic and personal site. So it's pretty. We've branched it off nicely, I think.
Yeah, and I'll just do my own shameless plug, which is a lot of you can't see the brilliance of Noah in his teaching, but you can read about this because I wouldn't have been able to get this book to the stage it is without his involvement. So that, Noah, you have my gratitude for. And for me, that shameless plug is 4 months ago, I had one Instagram follower. It was my mother. I've now reconfigured that, and I realized no one cares what I look like, no one cares what I say, but they do like me playing piano. So every few days, I now do a minute and a half improv with something that might
Oh,
be sage advice. And on the Connection Orchestrator IG handle, you get to see me at my brand new baby grand piano that I inherited with my new home.
nice.
Just play.
Oh my gosh.
Um,
So
and that's my therapy for coming out with a book in the middle of a very intense time for both of us. But we're grateful, Danielle, for your work and your partnership, and for featuring us now as we've come out of the first milestone, which is get it out there, to the second, which is people respected it and bought it. Now we're in that phase of let's hope it does some really great good, brings that quote gold to everyone, not for what we get out of it, but what all of you get out of it.
Mhm.
amazing. Well, this has just been an awesome day. And for everyone in the audience, just a reminder that our Lunch and Learn has been brought to you by Family Office Access. And if you'd like to connect with aligned family offices, you can check out how we can help with that. All audience members can get a 20% off using the promo code LIVE20 through the end of the month. And yeah, I can't wait, David, to follow you on Instagram. I want to hear more of your music. And
I
with
have more than just my mom now.
amazing. Well, with that, I will bid everyone farewell. Enjoy the rest of your day. And thank you, David. Thank you, Noah, so much. This has been a wonderful hour.
Thank you, Danielle.
Okay.
Thank you, David.
Thank you all.